But here we are gathering up. Now that's the stage we normally pull them at, is they're in the bud. And we can store them the longest that way. If we were going to market the next day, we'd want them to look like that. Sometimes we're going to get them like that no matter what. We're not going to catch them all at this stage. But it's nice if it looks like that we're going to have to hold them for a week. This stage is really great to pull them at. And these have been incredibly valuable for us, just plain daffodils with a few other things. Now, on this market shot in April, this may be the first market last spring. We've already got tulips, and we've got the anemones down there, and we have a lot of forsythia bushes at the farm, so we'll cut those too. People love to buy flowering branches of whatever they can get a hold of. And so it creates a powerful market display. The thing about daffodils, though, when you're planting, you want to try to find some that have nice, strong stems. There are a lot of specialty daffodil and narcissus varieties that are kind of have weak stems, even though the blooms are real showy. We went for this yellow one's called Camelot, and it's got a really strong stem. It's like a Viking of a daffodil. And I just poked my head in the cooler and took some pictures of stuff that was waiting to go to the market the next day. Anemones and daffodils mixed with some tulips. And these have already been pre-made into bouquets to sell at the market the next day. Makes really attractive bunches. They're kind of hard to resist, actually. People that have been cooped up all winter in house and they're coming out to the first farmers markets and they just go bonkers when they see all this color.
What do one of those retail for?
Those were, well, here's how we determine pricing on some of this stuff. And then I'm looking at this, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, daffodils cost us almost nothing, right? Our investment in them is almost nothing except for harvest. So they're kind of a freebie, and we get to use as many as we want. But if we sell them to the florist, we're going to ask 50 cents a piece for them, okay? But in a bouquet, that's basically the rule of thumb for anything we grow in the summer. If it costs very little to produce, we can kind of treat it as filler, all right? So, but the anemones, we want 75 cents a piece for. I see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got $3 worth of anemones in there. Tulips at $1.50 a piece. That's I've got 3 tulips in there. So these are probably $8 bouquets. This batch right here. We're selling. This was not taken this year. This year we went up to 6, $10, and $15 bouquets, and then often people will come and ask us to do $30, $40, $50 arrangements for their grandmother's 80th. You know, this happens at This is what we do all morning long on a Saturday with 5 people there, is do nothing but make bouquets. And so we have one person out front selling produce. But people walk up, and we are making bouquets on demand.
At the market? At the market. And you train those people?
We do. You bet we do. They hate me. Because what we do is, so we get a new crew, mostly get a new crew every spring. A couple will come in the beginning of March, and a couple more will come in the beginning of April, and then we'll have a couple more coming in midsummer as volunteers, but the 4 intern positions are filled by beginning of April. The way I train them to do this is that on Friday afternoons, in April, we're not having to harvest all day long on Friday. We can mostly get it done by 1 o'clock. In the afternoon, we'll meet up in the barn. We'll take out rows of tables, and we'll set up flowers. What I've learned to do is only set out exactly what I want them to make. I won't take everything out of the cooler. I'll just take out a certain range of color, okay? And basically what I'll do is I'll have them watch me make a sample bouquet, and telling them about the approximate value of each flower as it goes in, but not to be too hung up on that except for the most expensive stuff, right? And then I'll want them to make exactly the same bouquet for me. I don't mean, don't pick any other colors, don't put any more in it. I want you to make exactly this for a while, for 10 of them, until they have got, because there's a whole art to composition in terms of, you have to keep adding flowers as you're turning around the bouquet. It has to have a certain layered effect. I usually tell them it has to have an ice cream cone shape. This is a typical, what's actually formally referred to as a European hand-tied bouquet. And it's a bouquet that can be seen from all sides. It can be handed to somebody, it can be put on a table. It's not for a mantle where, you know, 3 sides are visible. And so once they start to get the hang of that, and it takes some people 10 minutes, takes some people 2 months. But we'll have this session on Friday afternoon, making bouquets to get started with, to stock our bouquet racks as we get started on Saturday morning. We want to have something that's ready to go, and then most of it is in these big masses of color on our table. So that's how they get trained. They basically, and then I come along and I'll critique everybody. You know, this has got to come out of here. Give me that. I want to show you how it needs to look. I'm on top of them because our business is on the line. If somebody comes to market and buys a funky looking bouquet from one of our new people, they don't like the way it looks and they think it costs too much for what they got, it's my business that suffered. The intern's leaving at the end of the year. So, yeah.
Do y'all have, in Arkansas, do you have to have a cut flower license?
No. And I was thinking about that this morning because I heard that last year.
You do in Louisiana. We're one of the only states that requires that a florist who actually designs the arrangement must be a licensed florist. I know that because I am one. So.
You guys have to change that. I'm sorry to tell you.
Pardon me?
People that work.
You guys have to.
Yeah,
You guys have
if
to change
if
that.
had a license,
You need
then
a lawyer.
would work under there.
We had the state law on tax on farmers market products changed because we had a lawyer work with our state farmers market organization, because the case can be made, especially that for flowers that are grown by the vendor, that is hindering their business. And the thing is, we didn't have a voice as individual farmers except through our farmers market. And then when we formed a statewide organization, we had a very large voice for the legislature. So we found a lawyer to help us with the state tax thing. My feeling is that law is unjust. So it's up to you to change things you don't like.
Here,
Sounds like a food policy council thing, Francis.
yeah. Here, if you want to sell cut flowers, you can have a cut flower license. If you're actually designing flower arrangement, you must have a licensed florist. So there's a layered effect going on. And yeah, you're right, it's probably not fair. I think we're one of 2 states in the country that requires it.
Anybody can learn to put cut flowers together. Anybody. It's not so hard. There's no mystery.
I think the Delta Community College is fixing to start that up. They're having lots of problems. And then the junior college is going to be free next year. They're going to have where you can become a licensed florist. Of course, I don't have my license as a florist, but I don't. It's that hard to get the license.
Not now.
It's just something you have to go through.
Right, now you simply take a test, a written test, and pay $50 and you can get it.
That means
Formerly,
you know
you
how to
had
do
to
it.
do a practical and a written, and pay a lot more money than that from way back in the day. But now it's fairly easy. If anybody's interested, I can give them some info about where they take the test info from. There's a book that.
Just imagine if you had to take a test and get a license to sell lettuce plants.
Right.
There would be a huge uproar.
Well, actually, you're supposed to have a license if you do sell lettuce plants other than to a commercial grower. If you sell to a non-commercial grower by law, you have to collect sales tax, which means you have to have a business license. And you have to have a business. So too, so you do have to.
Our flowers are considered fresh produce under our tax laws. So they're not actually collecting tax on these either. No. Okay, I'm gonna get in trouble on film if I say anything more, so. Considering how important cut flowers have been and what a big part of, everybody's always talking value added, value added, value added. Value added, blueberries or blueberry jam or blueberry juice or whatever, and value added in cut flowers is going from this to bouquets. And people pay for that. A lot of people feel awkward taking flowers. In fact, not very good at it. People that want to make their own bouquets that come by the stand say, well, can I make my own? I say, okay, just tell me what you want and I'll pick it up for you. And inevitably what they get is nasty looking because they don't have very much experience with it, So that's something that we can do that's easy for us because we're around this stuff all the time. We're saturated with it. We do this all the time.
Have you been out to Peck's Place in spring and summer out in Seattle?
I haven't.
They have, as tall as I am, just banks of flowers, and they're gorgeous, the Skagit Valley tulips and that kind of stuff. And they do that same thing. You can go in and you'll get a bouquet that's about this big. It's $40, but it's this big and it's beautiful and it's just like that. It's masses and masses of color.
Well, what you find out about cut flowers is that the price of cut flowers, the price somebody will pay for cut flowers reflects their intention with the flowers. Okay, so they might never spend $25 on a bouquet for themselves, but they're going to spend it on their 10th wedding anniversary, or for some funeral they're going to, or for their grandmother, or for the girlfriend they're trying to impress. So the price has something to do with something way beyond the actual value of the flowers. Whereas, you can hardly get people to pay $6 for a watermelon, whereas $6 is not very many cut flowers. It's not hard to convince them to pay $15 for a beautiful bouquet. And the watermelon took a lot more to grow, actually, a lot of times. So, anyway, so let's go on to, yes, sir?
Do you find that, are you able to use any of your, cover or green manure in bouquets, like buckwheat or millet or sorghum, Sudan grass, any of that stuff, as filler, or are you not doing any of that?
Yes and no. It depends on how wild looking it is. I personally don't like people putting Johnson grass heads in bouquets or thistle, things like that might momentarily look ornamental and then later be all over that person's backyard if they have a compost pile. Those are things that the wildflowers often don't make very good cut flowers, but some of them do. So it depends. We have some people at market that try to get in on the cut flower money and produce what we call roadkill bouquets. Because they're nasty looking and they don't last long, and they don't have there are people that trying to make the money from cut flowers that don't really pay much attention, and they're just sticking bunches of stuff together that have been held for too long. They haven't been refrigerated. They went out and gathered them in the hot sun, all that kind of stuff. So cut flowers require a certain amount of training and experience, just like vegetables do, to produce a good quality product. So, and as soon as I say something to you that I don't like the bouquet that looks like this, then one of my interns will make it and it'll be the first one that sells on Saturday morning. So I've learned to shut up a lot of times about what I like. So let's go on to tulips. So we looked at daffodils, easy to produce, naturalize easily. You can have lots of them. Tulips, can you grow tulips here? Grow tulips here. So we grow tulips only as an annual. And it's it's one of the crops we spend the most money on. You need to be careful if you're going to grow tulips for farmers market because they all come on, sometimes all 10,000 will come on in 1 week or within 10 days, and you have to be prepared to handle them. They can be fantastic for color at the early spring markets, but they're also expensive. So all of the tulips come from Holland. We get ours all through Edney. There's a lot of different distributors, but we have to order these in August to get what we want. We order in cases of 500, and we plant about 11,000 tulips for early spring because it's something, even though it costs a lot of money, it's something that we can have early color, and that's important for us to get started big time in the spring when people are first coming to market. So this is how we plant them. We plant gladiolus like this. We actually plant garlic like this too, and we can actually able to push the garlic in the ground, but we have to trowel tulips in. The deeper you plant tulips, the longer the stem. So we actually have, we know people who plant in pits that are a foot deep, and they plant in the bottom of the pits and backfill them, and they get these nice long stems like this. We find that we're able to plant about 6 inches deep and then use a thick layer of mulch. They come up through the mulch, and then we get a long enough stem. Some of that's weather dependent in the spring, but we plant like this, cover them up. We put feather meal or chicken litter in the rows when we plant the tulips, trowel them in, and then those two people up ahead there are putting the bulbs in the right spacing. They're 6 inches apart, 5 inches in a row, 5 rows in a bed. And then people are coming along behind and troweling them in. So it's a little bit of a project, but you can get a couple thousand bulbs in a bed this size, 200 feet long. And then they're mulched for the winter time. Normally we plant these at the beginning of December, and then they come up looking like that. Now, some of those are too far gone for harvest for market. So the thing is, we have to harvest twice a day in the springtime when they start blooming. Because what we don't want something as open as this one in the center. We want one that's about the stage of the one to the left in the foreground. That's the stage that you harvest at. We had a situation once when everything was up like this, second week of April, and we had 17 degrees predicted for the low. That was that Easter that it froze all the fruit in the southeast. And we had to dig all 10,000 tulips on that day and put them in the cooler. So we learned real quickly about how to store tulips and at what stage they can be. Even those greener stages will be okay as long as they're stored properly. Those are being pulled. And these tulips are something else. We pull the entire bulb out. We don't cut these. We pull, put our fingers down to the very base of the bulb and then pull slowly, and it'll come out. If they pop off, then we have to put them in floral solution in the cooler, but we want them to come out with a bulb on them because we're going to store a lot of these. We have to kind of meter them out over the course of an entire month at the market. But we do have to be really careful to get out there and harvest twice a day. We'll harvest in these crates, and then we'll take them into the cooler. We'll take these up to the barn, and then we get a bunch of recycled newspapers, and we'll wrap the varieties by variety. We'll wrap about 10 tulips at 10 stems at a time with the bulbs on them, cover them up really good with the newspaper, and lay them horizontally either on the shelves or in crates. And if they're in crates, they're labeled as to what variety they are and what date they were harvested, so we can rotate the stock out of the cooler. So what happens is the day before market or 2 days before market, depending on the development of the tulips, we'll take them out of the paper, cut the bulb off, and put them in floral solution, and then we'll put them in a heated room, and within a day or a day and a half, they'll start to bloom, and we'll catch them at exactly the right stage that we want for market, and then put them back in the cooler. That make sense? And that's the stage we want them at for market. No further along than that. These have been sleeved up for the farmer's market. We're selling these for $1.50 a stem, and they're costing us 35 to 50 cents a stem. And because you have some that don't come up, you got to be careful with tulips to charge enough. Yeah.
So you're talking about you purchasing like 20 some odd cases of these, right? I mean, like to plant.
Yeah.
Do you find that like after that season that it was worth all of what you just said, like pulling?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because of the timing of the crop. Because it comes on first thing at our first markets in the spring. You know, it's not that easy to have flowers in April and May. It's easy to have them in June, July, August, September, even October. But the earliest, you guys would have tulip blooms down here in March. But it depends on your market. You can't afford a lot of loss of sales at the market. So be careful when you plant to start off and test the market. I mean, you may be able to get $2 a stem, no problem. You may be the only person at your market that has tulips. We have about three growers at our farmers market. We grow the most of them. Of course, as soon as people see you selling a lot of tulips, and they're going to start planting tulips. Unfortunately, but the thing is, a lot of people don't know about these storage techniques. We can keep those tulips on the racks, like this. We can keep those there for a month if we keep our cooler in the high 30s. So the thing about keeping the bulbs on is that it keeps the plants hydrated. We tried dry storage with the bulbs cut off, but they tend to lose too much moisture. They're hard to rehydrate. So, yeah.
Do you have a humidity control in the cooler?
We don't.
How big is your cooler?
On a slab, pretty warm, pretty moist in
How
there.
big is your cooler?
This one is a 6 by 10 by 12.
You got several?
Excuse me, 8 by 10 by 12. No, well, we have another one that's just 6 by 6 by 6. Now this will store all of them. We don't have a lot of other stuff going in here this time of year. Some of the varieties. That's a good stage right there to be going to market. On a warm Saturday morning, these will all be fully open by 11 o'clock. So you got to be really careful about the stage that you take them to market. You don't want them too fully blown open by the time they get to market. But you know, often our first markets with tulips overlap with Easter. That's fantastic for tulip sales. And then they go really well with the daffodils and the anemones. And there's some pussy willow branches in those. We like these are parrot tulips.